The comment says, who's gonna pay for all this? It's in response to my video of talking about creating a sovereign communication network in a private co-op. Well, let's start at the very beginning and discuss about payment. In Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution of the United States, no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, or make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debt. So in public commerce, unless we're paying with gold or silver coins, nobody's actually paying a debt. We're using these things called Federal Reserve notes. Now, from this point, I gotta say that nothing what I am about to present is to be construed as financial advice, legal advice, health advice, what have you, right? But if you want to enter into my private membership association, I'm happy to give all of those types of advice and help. Ultimately, I think what you're asking with who's gonna pay for all this is like, how are we going to conduct trade? What's the medium of trade we're gonna use and how are we gonna do it? Ultimately, it comes down to a little bit of know-how and a little bit of extracting value and a little bit of competent commerce. So essentially using our true and real substance to create a debt that the obligor then has to step in and pay for, and then we leave with the real value and the obligor gets to address its own debts. I'll show you what again, Article 1 Section 10 does say that no state shall pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contract. So no state is going to be able to impair the obligation of contracts, the obligation of who is the responsible and liable party, the obligor of all debts. Well, I'll show you. In the United States Code, Title 18, Crimes and Criminal Procedure, subsection 8, the obligation or other security of the United States. We're going to define it. And so the term obligation or other security of the United States includes all bonds, certificate of indebtedness, national bank currency, Federal Reserve notes, right? Federal Reserve bank notes, coupons, like those payment coupons that come with every statement of our utilities or credit card bills or loan bills, right? The statements, those coupons, there's a coupon on the bottom. Anyway, so United States notes, treasury notes, gold certificates, silver certificates, fractional notes, certificates of a deposit, bills. Bills, the United States has to pay the bills. Checks or drafts of money drawn on or upon or authorized by officers of the United States, stamps and other representatives of value of whatever denomination. Look at that, they said stamps. Wonder what would happen if we read the postal manual. Stamps, because they actually mentioned canceled United States stamps. They mentioned stamps twice. So these are the obligations of the United States. This is what the United States has an obligation to address, to pay, right? To discharge, whatever you want to call it. In the United States Code, Title 31, which is money and finance, subsection 3123, this is the payment of obligations and interest on the public debt. And that means that the faith of the United States government is pledged to pay in legal tender principal and interest on the obligations of the government issued under this chapter. Okay, so they are what? They've pledged to pay. Okay? A simple definition of pledge is something given or held as security to guarantee payment of a debt or fulfillment of obligation. But here's Black's Law, the 4th edition here, and it's pledge, right? I'm going to do an entire different video about pledge because I found this to be very interesting. The necessary elements to constitute a contract one of a pledge are possession of the pledged property must pass from the pledger to the pledgee. The legal title to the property must remain in the pledger, and the pledgee must have a lien on the property for the payment of a debt or the performance of an obligation due him by the pledger or some other person. This definition talks at length about the difference between a normal pledge and a pledge that has to do with a mortgage, but a pledge is not a strictly conveyance at all, nor need any day of redemption be appointed for it. So we can enforce it any time. Stick with me, I know this is getting deep. we're getting around the corner. Okay, so what about obligation? Black's Law 4th edition talks about obligation, and that is that which a person is bound to do or forbear, or any duty imposed by law, promise, contract, which is what we're talking about, relations of society, courtesy, kindness, etc. An obligation is that which constitutes a legal or moral duty, and which renders a person liable to coercion and punishment for neglecting it. Now let's see Article 6 of the Constitution. The very first clause says, all debts shall be as valid against the United States. Right? There's the whole thing. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be valid against the United States under this Constitution. That doesn't say you or me or any state or anything. It just says shall be valid under the United States. So here's the tidy little bow here. Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution says that no state shall pass any law impairing the obligation of contracts. This Constitution of the United States of America is a contract. Part of that contract says that all debts shall be valid against the United States. In a contract, there's things called obligation. In Section 8 of Title 18 of the United States Code, the obligation or other securities of the United States is defined, and we find that it's defined as, in part, Federal Reserve notes, coupons, and bills and stamps, right? In Title 31, which is the Money and Finance section of the United States Code, subsection 3123, the payment of obligations and interest on the public debt, the faith of the United States government is pledged to pay in legal tender principal and interest on the obligations of the government issued under this chapter, and we've established that the obligations are all debt. We talked about what pledges are, we talked about what obligations are. Now we can go to the Uniform Commercial Code, which is the code of commerce that is shared by all nations conducting trade or commerce in the world. So UCC Article 3 is negotiable instruments. 3-103 will give us the definitions, and with respect for our time here, we're going to want to look at what an order is, and we can look into 3-104 for what a check is, what a draft is, what a note is, those kinds of things, okay? Ultimately, what we're going to find out is that every single time that we get a loan, we are giving a promissory note. This is the thing that is actual value with our real substance, our endorsement. We've been leaving blank endorsements. So if we put it all to practice, then we realize that we can go and then create a debt by entering into a contract for a loan, offering our promissory note, giving a proper endorsement, and then using that loan to acquire whatever asset that we are looking for or need, right? The land, the whatever it could possibly be, the spool of wire, the building materials for the tower, whatever it is, right? And then we now have the asset. We then transfer it into a private trust. Now it's trust res, it's property of a trust, and the trust is the governing body of all of its assets. Okay, and so there is no outside regulation of what to do with that land or that property, because the trust is the governing body. That's called self-governance. Okay, now, but that debt still is out there, and there's still, who's going to pay for that loan? Well, that comes down to the proper assignment and proper accounting by the person that entered into that debt. What they do is they leverage everything that I just said by assigning the true and real liable party, the true and real obligor, to perform on that debt, do their pledged obligation. And essentially, instead, and that would directly mean that we would be discharging those debts through the United States Treasury, allowing the Treasury to perform its give proper performance on the obligation, and therefore discharging not only our debts, but the debts of the United States as well. And this also would then directly acknowledge and combat the unbelievable fear campaigns that are, exploiting public policy and shaping public policy by saying we need to raise the debt ceiling, when really all we need to be doing is proper accounting and proper performance on the debts that already exist. Thank you. That's who would pay for all of this.